I have lived 75 long years, some gentle, some cruel, and many quietly ordinary. But nothing in all those years prepared me for the night I learned what my own son truly thought of me. Age teaches you to expect life's little betrayals. Forgotten birthdays, calls that never come, children who grow distant. But betrayal from your own blood, that hits a place so deep it echoes. It was nearly midnight when I woke up with a dry throat. The house was silent, the kind of silence that settles when everyone is asleep and dreaming. I slipped my feet into my slippers and made my way down the hallway, leaning lightly on the wall for support. My bones aren't as strong as they once were, but I still move with enough dignity to pretend they are. As I neared the kitchen, I heard a voice, low, hurried, almost whispered. "Michael. My son." I paused, thinking perhaps he couldn't sleep either, and was making himself tea. But then I realized he was on the phone. His voice was sharp, clipped, the tone he uses when he doesn't want someone to overhear him. Curiosity nudged me closer. I stepped quietly, years of motherhood teaching me how to move without a sound. Just as I reached the doorway, I heard words that froze me in place. "She won't make it another year." For a moment, my heart simply stopped. The world tilted. I gripped the doorframe to steady myself. He means me, I thought. My health, my age, he thinks I'm dying. I felt a sting behind my eyes. I hadn't been sick, not really. My joints ached and my legs sometimes trembled, but I hadn't felt the shadow of death. Still, maybe I had missed something. Maybe the doctor had said something Michael had heard. Maybe. But then he continued speaking, and the truth hit me harder than any illness could. "Once she's gone, the house is ours. We just need patience." A sharp sound escaped my throat, too soft to be a gasp but loud enough that I feared he'd heard me. My hand covered my mouth instinctively. The house. My house. The home I built with my husband. The home where Michael grew, ran, laughed, and cried. Every corner holds a memory of him. Every wall carries my life. I waited, praying silently that I had misunderstood. But his next sentence shattered that hope. "The bank will take it before the year ends. She won't survive that. Trust me." My body went cold. Not the cold of weather, but of deep truth, bone deep, soul deep. He wasn't waiting for my death. He was expecting my ruin. He was counting on it. I felt something heavy sink into me. Disbelief mixed with grief, a sharp taste of betrayal. My own son, the child I raised with everything I had, was speaking as though my suffering was an event he had scheduled into his future. I pressed myself against the wall as his footsteps moved. I backed away, retreating down the hallway before he could see me. My heartbeat thudded in my ears, too fast for my old chest. In my room, I closed the door as quietly as I could and sat on the edge of my bed. My hands shook so violently I had to press them together to stop. I did not cry at first. Shock can numb even the deepest wounds. But as minutes passed, my chest tightened, and tears finally spilled, slow, heavy drops that felt like years of love breaking apart. He wasn't talking about my health. He was talking about my life collapsing. And he was waiting for it. That was the night something inside me cracked. Not my heart, but the illusion that my son still cherished me. And that crack would soon become the opening through which a new, stronger version of me would rise. The next morning, sunlight slipped through my curtains like nothing had changed. Birds still chirped outside, and the smell of fresh tea drifted from the kitchen where my daughter-in-law, Lena, clattered dishes with her usual disinterest. But inside me, a storm brewed so fierce it rattled the very foundation of who I was. I sat on the edge of my bed for a long time, staring at my trembling hands. Hands that had fed Michael, bathed him, dressed him, held him during nightmares, celebrated his victories, and buried his father. Love poured into every action of those hands. And yet, those same hands now shook from betrayal. I couldn't confront him, not yet. I was 75, but I wasn't foolish. If Michael could say such cruel things behind my back, what else might he do if cornered? So I dressed slowly, tied my hair into a bun, and left the house without saying a word. The winter air bit at my cheeks, but I welcomed the sting. It kept me awake. It kept me steady. My destination was clear: Margaret. She had been my closest friend for nearly 50 years, a woman with sharp eyes, a keen mind, and a heart bigger than her frail body suggested. She used to work at a bank long before retirement pulled her into quiet days of knitting and herbal teas. When she opened the door and saw my face, she didn't ask questions. She simply said, "Come in." Inside her cozy living room, surrounded by the ticking of a grandfather clock and the scent of lavender, I finally let the truth spill out. Every word, every whisper I had heard, every tremble in Michael's voice. Margaret listened without interrupting. She had always been that kind of friend. When I finished, she took my hands gently in hers. "Evelyn," she said with a firmness that startled me, "we need to check your financial papers." "My papers?" I whispered. "Why?" "Because people who speak like your son did often do more than just speak." Her words felt like a cold knife. And she was right. She grabbed her old spectacles, fetched her laptop, and made some calls, quietly, politely, with the efficiency of someone who once handled countless accounts and signatures. Then she looked up at me with an expression that hollowed my stomach. "Evelyn, your name is tied to multiple loans." I felt the room tilt. "No. Y whisperat. I never." "I know," Margaret said gently. "You didn't sign these. But someone did. Someone pretending to be you. Forged signatures. Fake authorizations. Documents that tied my life, my home, my safety to debts I had never heard of." My heart pounded as Margaret pointed at each line, each number, each detail. Michael had done this. My son. The baby I had held to my chest. Tears blurred my vision, turning the words on the papers into dark stains. Why? Why would he do this to me? Margaret squeezed my arm. "Because he thought you would never notice. Because he thought you were old and easy to use." Her voice shook, not with anger at him, but with grief for me. I leaned back in my chair, memories washing over me. Michael laughing as a boy. His graduation day. His wedding when he told me, "You'll never be alone, Mom." That promise now felt like a cruel joke. Margaret leaned closer. "Listen to me. You can fight this. This is fraud. This is identity theft. You are the victim, Evelyn, not the burden." For the first time since last night, something inside me stirred. Not hope, but resolve. A quiet, simmering strength. I wiped my tears. "What do I do?" Margaret looked at me with a small, fierce smile. "You prepare. You gather evidence. And when the time is right, you strike." Her words rooted themselves in my heart. Michael had counted on my weakness. But I would show him the strength of a woman who had survived widowhood, poverty, heartbreak, and life itself. This betrayal would not end me. It would awaken me. For days after learning the truth about the forged loans, I moved through the house like a ghost, silent, watchful, unseen. Every smile I offered Michael was measured. Every nod to Lena was calculated. They believed the old woman was drifting further into confusion, further into fragility. Let them think so. There is a strange power in being underestimated. Margaret had told me the first step was legal protection, so 3 mornings later I walked, slowly but stubbornly, to the small law office at the corner of Elm Street. The brass letters on the door read, "Hale and Associates, Elder Protection and Property Law." Inside, a man with silver-streaked hair and a stern jaw greeted me. His name was Mr. Edward Hale, and though he looked like someone who rarely smiled, his eyes softened when I explained my situation. He listened patiently as I repeated everything I had overheard, every document Margaret had reviewed, every debt tied to my name. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair and said something I will never forget. "Mrs. Harris, what your son has done is not only immoral, it is criminal. You have the right to fight back. And I will help you." Those words felt like a deep breath after drowning. Mr. Hale worked with a precision that reminded me of a surgeon. He requested every record from the bank, every loan file, every signature sample. He pointed out inconsistencies, slants in handwriting, mismatched initials, dates that proved Michael had been signing on my behalf for over a year. How did I not see this? I whispered, my voice cracking. He tapped the papers. "Because you trusted him. And because criminals depend on trust." The truth stung. Next, we moved to secure the most important part of my life, my home. Mr. Hale helped me create a living trust, placing the deed in my name but protected from Michael or any creditor he dragged into my mess. From that moment, The house was untouchable. Not even Michael could claim a pebble from its walkway. The trust was my shield. The evidence was my sword. But revenge, real meaningful revenge, required patience. So I returned home that afternoon, stepping through the front door with a calmness that felt almost foreign. Michael was in the living room, scrolling through his phone, barely glancing at me. "Mom, your mail is on the table," he said absently. It took everything inside me not to laugh at the irony. On the table sat the very foreclosure warning he believed would break me. My supposed countdown to helplessness. I picked it up calmly, slipped it into my purse, and smiled at him. "Thank you, dear." He didn't even look up. Lena, who passed me in the hallway, gave me a tight smile. "Rough times ahead, But don't worry. We'll manage." The word tasted like poison. I watched them for weeks. How they whispered together. How they hid their panic when more bank letters came. How they assured each other that soon everything will be okay. I moved around the house quietly, gathering what I needed. Receipts, letters, recordings of their conversations. Every time they spoke carelessly, believing I was hard of hearing, I documented it. They planned for my downfall. I planned for their exposure. The tension grew as the foreclosure date approached. Michael's voice grew sharper. Lena snapped at shadows. And through it all, I stood steady, almost serene. On the morning the bank was supposed to arrive for the final inspection, I sat in the living room, dressed neatly, my documents stacked on the coffee table like soldiers awaiting command. Michael paced the hallway, running a hand through his hair. "This is bad, Lena. If she breaks, if she ends up in the hospital or something, we're stuck." I felt a chill at his words. But instead of despair, I felt something stronger. Power. When the doorbell rang, Michael rushed to answer it, expecting the bank officials. Instead he froze. Standing there was Mr. Hale, flanked by 2 officers. And I rose from my chair, my voice steady and cold. "This house isn't yours, Michael. It was never going to be yours." Michael's face drained of color the moment he saw the officers standing beside Mr. Hale. His mouth opened, but no sound came out, just a soft, stunned gasp, like a child caught with his hand in a jar he thought no one would ever look into. Behind him, Lena stepped forward, her smile stiffening. Is something wrong?" Mr. Hale greeted them with the formality of a man who had done this many times. "Mrs. Harris has filed a full fraud and identity theft report. We are here to execute legal orders related to her property and her financial safety." Michael blinked rapidly. Fraud? Identity theft? What are you talking about? "Mom." He turned to me, eyes wide, voice trembling. "Mom, what is this?" For the first time in months, I stood tall, taller than my bones should have allowed, taller than my age should have permitted. Strength doesn't always come from youth. Sometimes it rises from survival. I placed the stack of documents on the table between us. "Michael," I said softly, "these are the loan papers you signed in my name. The bank records. The forged signatures. The calls you made. The recordings of you discussing how I won't make it another year." Lena's face paled. "Recordings?" I nodded. "Every word you whispered in my house. You thought I couldn't hear. You thought old age meant weakness." Michael lunged forward and grabbed the papers, flipping through them with frantic disbelief. Mom, I can explain." "No," I said firmly. "You can't." One of the officers stepped forward. "Sir, we need you to put the documents down." Michael stepped back, breathing hard. "You're doing this to me? Your own son? After everything I've done for you?" A bitter laugh escaped me before I could stop it. "Everything you've done to me, Michael. Not for me." He wilted. Lena stepped forward, tears suddenly forming. We didn't mean any harm. We thought things were hard." I raised my hand sharply. "Don't pretend innocence. You stood beside him. You pushed him. You waited for my life to crumble." Her mouth snapped shut. Mr. Hale placed another envelope on the table. "The deed has been transferred to a protected trust. This home legally belongs only to Mrs. Harris, and neither of you have any claim to it." Michael's eyes widened in betrayal, as though I had wronged him. "So what? You're throwing us out." The officer spoke again, his voice firm. "Yes. You have 48 hours to vacate the property. And you, he added, turning to Michael, must come with us now. Michael's hands shot up in panic. What? Arrest? Why? I didn't know what I was signing. I didn't mean. But intention did not erase the harm. The handcuffs clicked. The sound was sharp, final, echoing through the living room like a door closing on years of motherhood. Years I had given freely, believing love would be enough. As they let him out, he twisted to look at me. Mom, don't let them do this. For a moment, the mother in me wavered. The part of me that remembered his first steps, his scraped knees, his childhood laughter. But then I remembered the whisper. She won't make it another year. And my heart hardened again. Outside, neighbors peeked from windows. Michael shouted his innocence. Lena stood on the porch, shaking, already calculating what she would do next. I closed the door gently, not slamming it. I didn't need theatrics. Peace was louder. The next day, boxes piled on the lawn. Lena's clothes, cosmetics, shoes, little luxuries she flaunted as though they were trophies. She glared at me as she dragged the last box to her car. You'll die alone, she hissed. I looked at her calmly. Being alone is better than living with snakes. She had no answer. When the car finally disappeared down the street, the silence that followed was not heavy. It was liberating. Weeks passed peacefully. I drank tea on my porch each morning, feeling the sunlight warm my skin. No whispers behind doors. No footsteps waiting to pounce on my weakness. No fear of letters in the mailbox. Just peace. One evening, I sat with my journal, writing slowly with the calmness of a woman who had reclaimed her life. They thought I was counting my final days. But betrayal gave me strength. Pain gave me clarity. And I learned that sometimes, losing a child is gaining freedom from an enemy. I turned the page softly. I may be 75, but my story didn't end. It began again. And for the first time in years, I felt truly, beautifully alive.